Over the years, I've made Force Cubes out of a lot of WCA puzzles. From 2x2, 3x3, and 4x4, to Pyraminx, Megaminx, and Scube, there really aren't a whole lot of other options left to make. Of course, we could finish off the big cubes, 5x5, 6x6, and 7x7, but that just sounds expensive and not all that interesting. So that leaves us with just two remaining WCA puzzles, Square 1 and Clock. I've explained before why Square 1 Force Cubes aren't possible, namely because the shape of the white and yellow pieces are completely different from the rest of the colors. And how would you even make Force Cubes with a clock? It's not even a cube. What kind of crazy person would attempt to do that? So I went ahead and bought two brand new QiYi Clocks in an attempt to answer those questions for you today. Now, if you're not familiar with Force Cubes, they usually involve buying 6 identical stickerless puzzles and then rearranging all the pieces so that you end up with one solid color per cube. They're not particularly useful, but they are a lot of fun to make. But on a clock, there are really only 2 sides and 2 colors on each puzzle, which means that we only need 2 of them to make solid color versions, one white and one black. Now, I say all this as if it's going to be as easy as just taking both puzzles apart, sorting them into white and black pieces, and then reassembling, but in reality, I know that there's going to be a lot more challenges along the way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get out the screwdriver and get started by seeing what these things look like inside. So here's what the inside of a QiYi clock looks like. Believe it or not, it's actually a lot less chaotic than the original Rubik's clock, which used springs and friction to hold the clock faces in place, whereas this one replaces all of that with hundreds of tiny magnets. You can see a bunch of them embedded into the teeth of the gear right there, and so basically as you turn each clock, it magnetically attracts to each little increment by these magnets attracting to that little white ring right there. But here's the first tricky part. These magnets on the white clock faces are actually the opposite polarity as those in the black clock faces, which means if we try and flip this around and put a black clock face on the black background, those magnets are going to end up repelling, so it's not going to want to stay in there, and best case scenario, if you do assemble it, it's going to always be halfway in between the 2 increments, which is definitely not what you want for solving a clock. So how do we fix this? Well, it would be extremely difficult to try and remove all these little tiny magnets and flip around their polarity, but fortunately, what is easy to remove is actually the magnets underneath this little white ring. What you can do is actually poke at this ring from the little colored bits on the opposite side, and eventually it will fall off. So now all we have to do is pop these 2 little magnets out of their spots, flip them around, put the little ring back on, and then the black clocks will attract to the black face as easy as that. I just swapped them around, so let's try it out. So black on black. It is attracting, and as you can see, it does snap into place exactly where we want it to. So now we just have to do that 35 more times, once for every single one of these rings on all the puzzles, and that'll be at least the first problem that we ran into solved. Alright, 72 tiny magnets flipped around without incident. So now all we have to do is sort all these gears into white and black and then put it together, right? Well, not so fast. Look at what happens when you assemble a full face of all white clocks and pins. Looks great, right? But the only problem is, if you flip it around, you realize that the corner clocks, as well as the pins, are connected from one side to the other, which means that if one side is white, the other one has to be black. Now don't worry, there is a way to fix this, although it's not going to be easy. But before we get to that, I think it would be fun to just put this clock back together in its current state, so having full white on one side and then full black on the other side, just to see what it looks like. And here it is. Not quite a full force clock because you still have white and black on the same puzzle, but the cool thing about it is that you only need one clock to make it. I've definitely seen a few of these around at cubing competitions, and yes, they work exactly the same way as you'd expect a clock to normally work. And so I'd say if you like the look of this and don't mind a bit of tedious reassembly, go ahead and try it on your own clock. All it is swapping around a bunch of tiny magnets. But that's not what you came to this video for. We're making force clocks. We want to fully separate the white from the black. Clock pieces, that is. So you're probably thinking, can't we just take all these corner clocks, pop off all these white caps, and then swap them out with some black ones? And the answer is, yes we can. But it's not quite that simple. You may have already noticed this, but on each clock, 2 of the corner pieces have magnets facing out only towards the white side. There's nothing on the other side. And then 2 of the corner pieces have magnets facing out only on the black side. And so what that means is we have to be very careful about which one of these corner pieces we pick for which puzzle. So for example, for the black clock, we have to choose all 4 of the corner pieces that have magnets on the black side. These are the only pieces that will attract to our new modified black covers, and if we accidentally use some of these white ones, well, they wouldn't work at all. And so now that we know which pieces we need to use on which puzzle, now we can swap around the colors. And so we can take off all the white clocks over here, and then swap them around with all the black clocks on these. Now practically, prying these off is just as easy as getting a knife in there and very carefully prying it up. It takes a lot of patience until eventually you get it lifted up enough that you can just pop it off like that. And then you can do the same thing with one of the pieces from the other clock, and then just swap the faces around. So put the black one on this one, the white one on this one, and there we go. Now we have a fully black corner piece that, importantly, is compatible with our black faceplates, and a fully white corner piece that's compatible with the white ones. Now the other issue with multicolor pieces comes with the pins. These ones we also need to swap around to get some pins that are either fully white or fully black. Now even though it is pretty easy to, once again, take a knife and then carefully pry these things open, the magnets inside of here make this perhaps the trickiest part of this entire mod. So the problem isn't so much with swapping around the colors, that's actually really easy. The problem is the fact that these pins work with just one massive magnet inside. Let me explain. This is actually a really ingenious mechanism on QiYi's part. Basically, the way the pins work is that massive magnet inside of them attracts to all the little tiny magnets that are inside of these clock faces right next to it. And so when you have it pushed down like this, it'll attract to all these black pieces just fine. And then when you push it up, it will attract to all the white pieces that are normally up around it like this. The only problem is, what we're trying to do is swap out all these white pieces with black pieces, which, as we learned earlier, have the opposite polarity as the white pieces, which means they no longer will stick. And so what this means for us is that there's no way to fix this without taking out 100 little tiny black magnets for this side of the cube, swapping them around and putting them back in, or we have to get creative inside of the pins. I think ideally what you would do is try and find a replacement for this big magnet that's half the height, and then try and stick two of them in here. So one of them on this side, one of them on this side, with opposite polarities. It would be really hard to force them in there. And of course, the resulting magnetic click would not be quite as strong, but I think that would work pretty well. But because I'm too lazy to go out and buy some more magnets, I'm going to try and make it work with these little ones that I do have on hand. Conveniently, these pins have not just one big slot for the magnet, but also this little hole inside where I think we can actually fit a whole bunch of these magnets. It looks like we can fit 5 of them inside, and so now we can do the exact same thing on the other half, stick them together, and now we have a pin that has a symmetric magnetic force, and assuming I got the polarity right, it'll now stick to both sides. Ta-da! It sticks to black right there, and then if we also have black on the opposite side, it'll stick to that one too. I don't think the magnetic force is going to be quite as strong, but hopefully it'll be enough. We'll have to wait and see. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these corner pieces and pins modified, and then we can reassemble the cube and see how it looks. Oh. Minor issue, there's sticky out bits on both of the white sides, so these will never go together. I guess we're gonna have to modify that too. Alright, after a surprising amount of work to swap around the pieces of just 2 puzzles, our Force Clocks are complete. As you can see, they look absolutely awesome. We have the blackout stealth one over here, which might just be my favorite. And of course, the pure unstained white one over here. They both look pretty funny, but also really cool. But the awesome thing is, unlike most Force Cubes that I make, which only look cool, these ones are entirely functional, just like a normal clock. I was definitely getting a little bit worried there about the magnet strength on the pins not quite being enough to hold them up. But as you can see, it works great. It is a little bit less strong than a normal clock, but I think it's close enough that hardly anyone would notice, and it's not gonna affect your solves. So speaking of, let's go ahead and do a solve real quick. 3, 2, 1, and go. You can see my pro clock skills here. There we go, got the first side, other side. Average like 9 on clock very consistently, but probably not when I'm filming in front of a camera. That felt pretty good though. So you're getting 100% fully uncompromised QiYi Clock performance, absolute best clock in the world, but you also get to show off with a very unique looking puzzle, whatever color you want, and you'll never get it confused with anyone else's QiYi Clock. So absolutely a fun and useful mod to do, as long as you can figure out that magnet problem. I should mention, I'm not actually the first person to make Force Clocks. Junior Solis, the same person who made this Rex Geo for me, was actually making one at a cubing competition one time, which inspired me to make these. That's why it may have felt like I knew what all the challenges were going to be ahead of time. It's because I did. Full credit to Junior. His channel will be linked in the description. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this surprisingly awesome modification. I really hope you all enjoyed the process as much as I did, because that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time.